Hi there, today we will talk about some words which are very confusing in IELTS listening, especially IELTS listening part 3, multiple choice, which is supposed to be one of the most difficult types of questions in listening. That's why watch this video till the end to know all these confusing words, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Okay, let's look at one test. I've taken the test from Cambridge 15, IELTS Cambridge 15, test 4. If you haven't done it yet, stop this video, go and do it, and then come back because we will analyze just 4 questions taken from this test, test 4. Okay, if we look at this test, we see here that it's about presentation about refrigeration, and we have 4 questions. And let's start with the first one. Let's see which keywords we can underline here. It's what did Annie discover from reading about ice houses, why they were first created, how the ice was kept frozen, and where they were located. Pay attention to the first words, like why shows the reason, how shows the way something is done, and where shows the location. Why they were first created, why first created. Second, how ice frozen. C, where were located, and all these are the important keywords, and we need the information that Annie discovered from reading about those ice houses. Let's listen and then come back again to this question.
Okay, Jack, before we plan our presentation about refrigeration, let's discuss what we've discovered so far.
Fine, Annie, though I have to admit I haven't done much research yet.
Nor me, but I found an interesting article about ice houses. I'd seen some 18th and 19th century ones here in the UK, so I knew they were often built in a shady area or underground, close to lakes that might freeze in the winter. Then blocks of ice could be cut and stored in the ice house. But I didn't realise that insulating the blocks with straw or sawdust meant they didn't melt for months. The ancient Romans had refrigeration too.
I didn't know that.
Well, here we can see that she starts telling us about this article. She says that I found an interesting article. I'd seen some 18th, 19th century ones here. Once she means ice houses here in the UK. So I knew they were often built in a shady area or underground and close to lakes, blah, blah, blah. Then she says that these blocks of ice could be cut and stored in the ice houses. But I didn't realize that insulating the blocks with straw and sawdust meant they didn't melt for months. Here you can say that I see 2 answers here. The location, it's C, and I see how they kept frozen. Which one is correct? Firstly, if we see the information about the location, we can see that she says, I'd seen some 18th and 19th century ones here in the UK. So I knew that they were often built in a shady area or underground. So she knew where they were located. She knew this information, their location, before she read the article. She even uses here past perfect. I'd seen, I had seen. It means that she saw this ice houses before she read the article. That's why be careful with tenses, especially past perfect. Past perfect shows that one action happened before the other action. And she says, so I knew. I knew means that she knew this before. That's why C is not the answer. The answer is B, how those blocks kept frozen. And the word that is a bit confusing here is meant. Insulating the blocks with straw and sawdust meant they didn't melt for months. The first form of this verb is to mean. To mean is like to have a meaning of something. This means love, for example. Here meant has the other meaning. It's used to show the purpose. Like, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't have this intention or this purpose to hurt you. And using the blocks with straw and sawdust meant they didn't melt for months. So they show the purpose of using those blocks. Also, there are some other words like min, which have a little bit different meaning. For example, used to. Used to shows the past. They frequently use it in the recording. So they say a person used to do something, but it's pronounced very fast. And used to is heard like use. And use means like he or she uses something right now. People think that it's about the present, but it's actually about the past. He used to smoke. He had this habit in the past, but he's not smoking right now. So min and used to are a bit confusing words because they may have a totally different meaning than it may seem. Let's go further. Let's go to the second question. It's what point does Annie make about refrigeration in ancient Rome? Point. So some interesting information, let's say piece of information. It became a commercial business. It used snow from nearby. It took a long time to become popular. Commercial business, snow from nearby, and long time popular, long time to become popular. Here I have to mention the skill that you need to have. It's paraphrasing. So instead of commercial building, you will have some words which relate to money, monetization, and something else. Instead of snow nearby, the nearby word shows that something is very close to the area. It can be close, near, next, and so on. And become popular is like become well-known, eminent, prominent, and some other words. So we have to be ready to hear the paraphrased forms of these words. Let's listen to this part and then analyze it.
Yes, pits were dug in the ground and snow was imported from the mountains, even though they were at quite a distance. The snow was stored in the pits. Ice formed at the bottom of it. Both the ice and the snow were then sold. The ice cost more than the snow, and my guess is that only the wealthy members of society could afford it.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So after the information how the blocks kept frozen for months, Annie starts speaking about Romans, that they had refrigeration too. And Jack said, I didn't know that. And then she explains how they had it. Yes, pits were dug in the ground and snow was imported from the mountains. And then she says, even though they were at quite a distance, was even though she weakens the answer about mountains, that they were very far from that area. And I want to mention some other words which are close to even though, which usually weaken the answer, like even though, although, though, while, whereas, despite, in spite of, just conjunctions, but or yet. So the answer here relates to a commercial business, because here we see both the ice and the snow were then sold. Sold, it's about commercial business. So you see something about business, entrepreneurship, and so on. Let's look at the next question. The next question is, in connection with modern refrigerators, both Annie and Jack are worried about the complexity of the technology, the fact that some are disposed of irresponsibly, the large number that quickly break down. So complexity, technology, disposed of irresponsibly, so disposed of incorrectly, and large number quickly break down. So these are our keywords, but also we need to be careful with such questions. Here we see both are worried about. It's about feelings. So when they say the fact, what happened, they should show the feeling, that they both had this feeling of disturbance, they were both worried. And let's listen to the recording.
I also came across an article about modern domestic fridges. Several different technologies are used, but they were too complex for me to understand.
You have to wonder what happens when people get rid of old ones.
You mean because the gases in them are harmful for the environment?
Exactly. At least there are now plenty of organisations that will recycle most of the components safely. But of course, some people just dump old fridges in the countryside.
It's hard to see how they can be stopped, unfortunately. In the UK, we get rid of 3 million a year altogether.
That sounds a lot, especially because fridges hardly ever break down.
That's right.
So as you see, Jack starts, I wouldn't be surprised. I also came across an article about modern domestic fridges, modern. It's about modern refrigerators. And several different technologies are used, but they were too complex for me to understand. So it's about complexity, that he couldn't understand it. We see here the fact that it was difficult to understand. It was too complex. But we don't see a feeling here. We don't see a feeling here that he was worried about that. And we don't see that Annie was worried about that. Instead, she mentions the other point. She says that you have to wonder what happens when people get rid of old ones. So she changed the topic of the conversation, and he says that, yeah, you mean because of the gases, the harm to the environment. She continues her speech. She said, at least there are now plenty of organizations that will recycle it, but most of course some people just dump old fridges in their countryside. At least and but show some weakening, like despite the presence of such places, people just dump them. At least is used as despite to weaken the information about different organizations. Annie shows her feeling with this weakening, at least and but Jack shows it with these words. It's hard to see how they can be stopped, unfortunately. He uses this unfortunately, and he shows his attitude towards this situation. So at least and but is our one pair of words, and it's hard to see is another expression which also shows feeling, disturbance. Something is impossible to observe, to witness. So this all relates to feelings as well. And some words about the last answer, where they say the large number that quickly break down. Annie continues, she says, that sounds a lot, especially because fridges hardly ever break down. Hardly ever shows that they almost never break down. It's the opposite of the answer C. But if you skip hardly, you can accept it as a positive answer. Be careful. A confusing word here is hardly. Hardly ever, barely, rarely. All these words show that something happens very, very infrequently. That's why you have to be careful with such words as well. And let's go to the last question. The last question is, what do Jack and Annie agree regarding domestic fridges? They are generally good value for money. There are plenty of useful variations. They are more useful than other domestic appliances. So here we have generally good value for money. Good value for money. It doesn't mean that they are cheap. They may be expensive, but the value, the money that you pay for them and the period that they serve to you is really worth it. That's why it's good value for money. And plenty useful variations, plenty, it's like many. And they are more useful than other domestic appliances. More useful other domestic appliances. Here, comparison. We need to hear the exact comparison here in the recording, that refrigerators, fridges, are more useful than a dishwasher, a washing machine, and so on. Okay, let's listen to the recording and then analyze it.
In this country, we keep domestic fridges for 11 years on average, and a lot lasts for 20 or more. So if you divide the cost by the number of years you can use a fridge, they're not expensive compared with some household appliances.
True. I suppose manufacturers encourage people to spend more by making them different colours and designs. I'm sure when my parents bought their first fridge, they had hardly any choice.
Yes, there's been quite a change.
So here Jack says, that's right, in this country we keep domestic fridges for 11 years on average, and a lot lasts for 20 or more. So if you divide the cost by the number of years you can use a fridge, they are not expensive compared with some other household appliances. And Annie supports this. She says, true. So here you can see that we have two confusing answers. Firstly, he says something about their value. It's A answer. And when Annie says true, she says yes. their cost of value is really good. So you can see that here they compare with other household appliances, but they compare their price. So if we look at our C answer, we can see that they compare whether or not fridges are more useful than other domestic or household appliances. In C answer, they don't compare their price. That's why C is wrong. A is close to us because she said true. She confirmed his opinion. And then we see that she says that manufacturers use different colors, designs, and I'm sure when my parents bought it, their first fridge, they had hardly any choice. And then Jack says, yes, there has been quite a change. He also agrees, but he agrees that variations changed. Okay, he doesn't agree with B answer where they say that there are plenty of useful variations. It's not about being useful, it's about just their design, color, and so on. He agrees about the change in design, okay, not about being useful. So the answer is A. This test is the most difficult one, the last one, because they agree on two things, but we need to find the one that we have in our answers. And they are very close to each other. That's why they can be easily confused. Well, that's all about some confusing words, and I hope that this video will really help you to find correct answers in multiple choice, because multiple choice is really very difficult. You have to be able to understand the script, the text or recording, and at the same time analyze in your brain it very fast. That's why you need to practice a lot. Practice, practice, and again practice. See you in the next video.